Amazing, yeah. It really is. So was it just old age?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, you can't complain about that.
No.
It's amazing. Alex.
We are live and you can begin whenever you're ready, boss.
Okay, thank you. You're just. I saw him today, so I expect he's just around the way.
Okay.
I haven't worked this before. I have a couple of positive now. We have more, but they haven't been actually, they haven't been talking about that.
That's always a problem. There he is.
I do that every 4 weeks. So it needs to be.
We were thinking about starting without you.
I assumed you would.
Didn't want to.
Something bad wrong with roads in this town. That's took me 2 hours to get home.
From this downtown.
Yeah.
Which one? Which one?
Or 71.
No, I mean, I tried to wait. I couldn't, Liberty was gridlock all the way back to the high. Everything I tried was pretty.
That's
Good one.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. This is the April 17, 2023 regular meeting of Prospect Kentucky City Council. I call the meeting to order. First order of business is the approval of the minutes for the council meeting that was held on March 20th. Those have been distributed. Are there any corrections or comments?
Yeah, I have one. According to these, Chris Gorman was both attending in person and participating remotely. And while he's very capable and skilled, I doubt that he did that.
Probably didn't do both.
All right.
He attended remotely. I'll correct that.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second,
Second.
further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. I have asked, invited 2 gentlemen from Rumpke to be here this evening to talk with us. And I'll give a few words to lead into this. We are coming up on putting our budget together. We're also experiencing the renewal of some of our contracts. We renewed our contract with Greenscapes in January, I think it was. And that there was an 18% increase in the cost. But that contract had been in place for several years. So with the inflation that we've experienced and with labor issues that all employers are facing, the increase was expected, and it was a competitive bid. There was another bid that was quite close to it, so I think we got probably the right number. But our revenues will not adjust as easily as our contract did with Greenscapes and as our contract will with Rumpke. So we'll have to take a hard look at the services that we receive and consider what we can afford. And as part of that, we've met a couple of times with representatives of Rumpke. They're here this evening. They're facing the same issues that all employers are facing with turnover of employees, higher costs in general, higher labor costs in particular. So we thought it would be beneficial. They offered to meet with us this evening. We thought that would be beneficial. But that's the context for the presence of Dwight Willoughby, who's the regional sales manager, and of Chris Pierce, who's the municipal sales specialist. So with that said, Chris, if you'd like to say a few words, and then we can maybe have some questions and some discussion.
I was told I might want to stand close to the microphone here. My name's Chris Pierce, municipal rep for City of Prospect, and I've worked with former Mayor Evans for many years, and so I'm happy to be here tonight. And I know that Eric, our regional vice president, and Dwayne here had met previously, and it's just because we have served the city here for several decades, actually, and we just, as you experience that you have seen inflation from other bids and different things, we wanted to go out ahead of that just to let the city know. So it wasn't anything unexpected, but some cities have already known because you already seen it in different costs is just what it's costing to do business. But, you know, we wanted to come, anything that we could offer as far as questions, if you were looking at a certain budget and wanted to change any services to try to save on those costs, you know, we still offer the full service, and we'll still continue to do that, but we can also put some input if there's any questions tonight on anything at all pertaining to Rumpke and your service. And so if there's any questions.
And I
feel free to ask.
should have mentioned, Chris, the bids will be invited, if that's the proper term, just in the next couple of months.
Okay.
So this is a topic that's ripe for discussion, and we appreciate you being here. We understand that you aren't going to submit the same number you did several years ago.
Correct.
So I guess talk a little bit about some of the services that we have and what some options might be that might reduce what we would pay.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, we're doing the twice a week rear door trash service. We're also doing recycling that we do rear door, and then yard waste as well. And that's one thing I think that was mentioned, you know, that with recycling, that could be an option. It's an area that certainly you might could save, that maybe that one goes curbside, kind of like a recycling pickup. That one could probably save quite a bit on the percentage of what we're, you know, looking at as far as the new rate. That would be the easiest, you know, option to look at. Another thing I know in past bids, Prospect has always actually put a few things out there in the bid specs to look at pricing across from different services. And that might be a good way to do it, to still put your bid specs with options on it, so that you're not locked into one thing. You can look, what if we say with the current service, put that maybe as an option one. Option two might go, well, what if we went to curbside recycling? And could definitely look at those options, and, you know, depending on what your residents too want as well. And I know having, you know, twice a week rear door service, you know, you know, you could go to once a week, but that might be a difficult one to convert over. It seems like the biggest opportunity would be the recycling one, if you do that. But that would be the best way, I think, is to do maybe an option one, option two, you know, put a couple options in there for your pricing. And then maybe you can gauge with residents, you know, here's what we're looking at, here's our budget, here's, you know, one route that we could go. That's probably what I'd recommend. I think that's the best thing. We've been looking at this for a while, and, you know, what we could offer. And I think the biggest opportunity would be the recycling, if you wanted to try to reduce costs.
And would the recycling be with rolling carts that you all would supply?
Yes, it would still have a 65-gallon recycling cart. It'd just be placed out at the curb.
And I'm just thinking out loud, I'm wondering if we have containers that are that large, and it's a rolling cart, is that right?
Yes, it would be a rolling cart. It's just like some of the trash carts. Those are 95-gallon, so just a little bit smaller than that would be a good way to go. I know that you're using the 18-gallon bins, you know, as well, and some within the city, I think, are using some of those 65-gallon carts already.
Okay, any questions or comments from council members?
Yeah, the difference between the green bins and the rolling carts.
Yes.
What does the resident have to do? Just ask for the bigger one or the rolling one?
Well, it's something that that they could pay a lease fee on, and then we would deliver that as far as just to go to the bigger size. So I would say if you're looking at doing a bid situation, I would probably look at putting it as just being maybe a 65-gallon cart possibly at the curb. I think those are a little bit easier. I mean, it's more capacity, but the bins, I think the wheels make it a little bit lighter and easier to get to the curb versus a bin. The lid's attached to it, so I think it keeps things a little cleaner because sometimes the bin, windy day like today, if the lid's not on it good, you know, that can blow out.
Could you put it together with option one as is? Option two is, curbside option with the caveat of the bins as we have them today,
Right.
or change them out to the 65. Because once again, the lids and the, raccoons and all of those other things that we kind of face right now with trash, I think then would be most appropriate. So maybe you can kind of give us a la carte so we can kind of bounce it against.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of, I think in the past bids, City of Prospect actually has put out bid specs that kind of had some of those different services that we quoted. But I'd be happy to help with bid specs. I've helped other cities with some of those, and the way to look at it, I could send a sample one with those options on it.
That's the way your current contract reads, right? Your current contract has that à la carte numbers in it.
It does.
That's the way we established it when we went out for bids.
Right.
And I assume that's what we're going to be doing this time.
Yes, I would definitely keep it that way, and then the possibility of adding some other actually options where basically it's still a la carte, but you might would have an option too that has different a la carte. So, where it would be, I would probably stay with one or the other because you don't want to really commingle a lot of different services together where it would be, well, half the city has bins, half of them have, 65-gallon. You kind of want to keep it uniform. It'd be, and that's another thing too, because possibly if going to 65-gallon carts and it was curbside, maybe that's a possibility for a hauler like Rumpke that we would be able to maybe automate some of that, which would increase, efficiencies that would get serviced quicker, be in and out of the city quicker.
Yeah. Would there be, or to what extent would there be any ability for one resident to choose one option and another? To some people I know that not having to take it to the curb because they're older
Yeah.
people is a big deal.
Yeah.
And they might be willing to go to once a week if they deserve that. And other people would feel just the opposite.
Yeah. That one, that would be a tough one. And I think, as far as the recycling for the opportunity to be there, it would have to be one or the other, because it would be hard to then keep track of, as drivers coming through to
Right.
service city, who's doing.
So basically the
service.
whole city would have to get, whatever the final decision is, the whole city would have to get it.
Right. And that's another thing that kind of goes back to the recycling one where we feel like that was the biggest opportunity, even if you wanted to go that route, just because trash is given. I mean, you need to do that. You need to provide that service and wait for the resident to be able to have their service picked up. Recycling, some of those things, or yard waste can be more of an optional thing as far as it's not as imperative, as to get recycling picked up as it is trash or yard waste. Sometimes if someone's not able, to get that out, they might have a yard waste service that's already doing it for them. So sometimes that's remedied that way. But yeah, absolutely. I think that definitely the rear door trash service is a very nice service to be able to have that rear door. Absolutely.
Any other comments? Don?
Bruce, could you put some numbers together soon for us? We're going through the budgeting process, so some approximate numbers.
Yeah, we could definitely do some ballpark numbers, and I know that knowing that it is going after bid, we wouldn't want to put our exact number out there, as far as being competitive, but we definitely can put some ideas. I know that Eric and Dwayne that might have spoken with you a little bit on some idea of where those numbers would be, but yeah, we definitely could provide that.
Thank you.
I think if there's someone in the audience, normally we wouldn't open it up for discussion, but I think with given this topic, if somebody's got a question, go ahead and speak up. Yes.
Yeah, so I understand in the current ranks, talk about rear door. The people is actually supposed to come down driveway, get to the cycle and get across.
No, it is. Yeah. Yeah, so there is, trash definitely in its rear door, then recycling does have, the option of a rear door service within the contract.
So what we're saying is for to help reduce costs for the residents in the city, what we're saying is an option you could do in order to reduce some costs instead of doing rear door recycling because of the bins that actually provide a portable, reduce the cost, we would be able to automate it, be more efficient to reduce. That's what they'll make. You would have to take it recycling smaller, 65 gallon container to the curb and bring it back to wherever. That's, yes.
I have a question on recycling at this point is, are you making any money on it?
No.
No, but
You weren't.
recycling over the years has always been a thing that's
We went,
up and down.
yeah, Chris, we went through this maybe 3 years ago. We did a whole matrix of what if Sutherland and Innisbrook, because they're flat, had a different rate schedule than Hunting Creek or Fox Harbor, which had a significantly different topography. And, we went through all that drill and it came down that our residents like what they have in spades.
So commodity market in for recycling is like an all-time low right now. It went up $5 last month. So it last month. So it's been very tough across the last 6 months.
Well, would you think that if the city went to curbside recycling, that the volume would drop off significantly?
I think it would still be there. I think what we've found in other cities and participation rates is that people do want to recycle. And, in the long run, even when commodities are low, there's still other values to that. And one is that it's keeping it out of the landfill. It is more sustainable. I think there are goals within the cities that we're pushing more that way, to capture that. And that some cities have, you're doing one time a week, but some cities are still on every other week. And so there's still opportunities to increase that. So we do find we do a lot of rear door cities still, and that most of them all are doing curbside programs, and it's doing pretty well.
So we want to continue to recycle, but it's been very difficult.
Well, we've been very pro recycling over the years to the extent that we've given everybody two free bins.
Right.
So, this would be a significant change if you're going to say, okay, well, throw your bins away or turn them back into City Hall and rent a 65-gallon rolling cart.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't think we would be asking our residents to rent cars.
Right. Yeah. What I was mentioning is going to a
Would be
bid
a
spec
price.
where you're offering that program as a 65-gallon cart. So then actually, really, we should be at the end of the year capturing more recycling because the bins are 18 gallons. So once they're full, we know what happens. Once those bins are full, the overflow goes into the trash. So if we have 65-gallon carts, I think that we could get more material from the city going to a 65-gallon cart. And what I've seen in some other cities and data, I used to do before I was a municipal rep. I've been with Rumpke for almost 14 years, and for 4 years I was the regional recycling rep. And so I've definitely seen some of that data that it does show just the whatever overflows out of 18 gallons getting full, does go into the trash. So we have a bigger cart, we can capture more material.
But there are two 18 gallons.
Yeah, too.
We did that
to
preclude what you're saying right now. I don't know. I have no data to support that there are overflows from the 36 gallons, but
yeah,
I'd be surprised if it's all.
I think we've got another question here.
A question. One is a larger container, and we found that at least like the situation where you could go to bi-weekly service instead of weekly. Well, I mean, you're talking about a big increase in volume.
Yeah.
From 17 growth, if we got.
Right, right.
Yeah, I could certainly
Lot of
do that weekly if I had a
Well,
large
that's what it's
container.
heard.
Yeah.
That's why we-
You know, it depends on your flow. I know that I've seen, people who do more recycling, they put it in trash, and they've been able to come to where, like, I only had a Kroger bag of trash, everything else getting recycled. So, but what is on the other side is, well, once that 80 gallons that fills up, or, you know, 2 gallons, is that if it does fill up, well, whatever's left, usually it's not held over till the next week. It's normally on the trash to get it moved out.
Some of us like me have 18 gallons.
Yeah, that's great.
That we put out.
This is a good discussion. I think
Yeah.
if there are further questions or comments, if you'll just address those to me, and we'll get in touch with our friends from Rumpke and try to respond to those.
Yes, sir. Sounds good.
Chris, thank you all both so much.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, this is the time where we have comments from citizens. So if anyone's signed up, or even if they haven't signed up, yes. And then we have a 3-minute limit.
Don't worry, I will be, my first city council meeting. so
Oh,
I
well,
don't know
welcome.
if they're gonna do it, but-
Welcome, we're glad you're here.
Thank you. My name is Porter O'Brien. I live in Sutherland. My husband and I moved here about 10 years ago with a 6-month-old, and now we have 3 kids, and we've loved it here. So I'm sorry it's my first city council meeting, but it's nice to see that there are a lot of good people taking care of our town. I'm really just here out of a question. Our board came to you guys, I think, several months ago to get the fence that connects or that blocks Sutherland from Duroc and I guess it's River Road along that sort of patch. I think it was several months ago that it got approved, and the approval was to replace the fence exactly as it was. And I had reached out to the board that had contacted us, telling us that it was going to be replaced, and just said, is there any way I can increase the height? There are a couple of patches in the neighborhood that was previously approved to go. I think the standard that Prospect allows is 10 feet, maybe it's 8 feet, 6 feet. Okay. So I was trying to get approval to go to 8 or 10. Again, it's been fine for all these years, but about 4 months ago, the folks that live at the end of Duroc put in 4 floodlights, but they're not in the city of Prospect, so I understand there's nothing you guys can do. And so I was just trying to see if there's any way I could get approval for our fence to go a little higher to block the floodlight. It comes into our living room, our kitchen, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And it's on multiple sides of their house. I don't know what happened back there that made them spooked, but they're max security now. So I'm just here to see if there's any way we can get a little more height. I don't know the process for doing that. But that's me pleading my little case. We're at 7303 Blakemore Court. I actually spoke with Rick Wilson, who had suggested I come here, and he drove by and he was like, I see what you mean. You know, you got a problem back there. But he told me that this was the best path to take. So here I am.
Have you contacted Metro Code Enforcement?
No, but according to Rick, because they're not in Prospect, they're not breaking any sort of violations by code.
Not Prospect violations.
I
but they-
understand.
But they may be.
They don't have any rule violations on that, according to Rick. I didn't go search it myself, but he indicated that they don't have the same code restrictions that we have, so they're within their right to have those lights.
It might be worth it, making that inquiry, Metro Louisville.
Okay.
I think that's a good suggestion, Frank. I don't know that they could help you or couldn't help you, but
Okay.
I don't want to discourage you from seeking a variance, but I'm not sure how well received that would be on the height. But it's certainly a difficult situation for you.
Even though there are some other properties that have the higher height.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know what properties have other heights, so I'd have to have more information. But I think it's clearly, we appreciate that you've got a problem, and we'd like to try to help you, but I'm not sure what we can do. Certainly tonight, I'm not sure what we can do tonight.
Okay. So I should ask Louisville Metro,
I would,
and then if they can't do anything.
yeah, then Mr. Clark here is a very distinguished member of your
Yeah.
HOA board,
Of course.
and he's a great resource for anybody that lives in Southern.
And an activist.
Or anybody who lives anywhere in Prospect. He's
Yeah, it's not the kind of house where I can play that much.
What'd you say your address was?
7303 Blakemore Court.
It's good when the assistant police chief asks you your address in this context, so.
I got nothing to hide, go on
I'll
about.
talk to Ray. No, we had an issue and stuff, very simple. Submitted basketball. Sticking right out.
Okay,
You can basically, it went right through.
yeah,
It can be worth a phone call.
okay, I appreciate it. Okay,
Doug?
thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing she could do is just come to the council and ask for whatever you want to call it, variance
Variance.
or something like that,
Yeah,
and see what happens.
yeah. Let's see what, if Tony can do any good. That's a great starting point, and then.
Always ask.
Yeah, and then if that doesn't work, ask the council for a variance. I think that's a very good suggestion from Councilman Evans.
You just think it's too premature to do that now because that would be the better first path?
Let's do that first and then
Okay,
come back. You ought to have something prepared to present to us in writing.
okay.
But
One other thing. Have you approached the neighbors that have the lights?
I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
It's
Perhaps
just,
Metro.
there's a lot going on in that street.
Yeah.
And I would not want a store to tell them to do something their way.
One of the other things you may want to consider, and this is maybe cost prohibitive, but there are landscaping things that you could do on your property that
Yeah,
blocks.
it's much better in the summer. It is when the
Yeah,
trees are in
Yeah,
bloom.
Yeah, you'll fix that 5 years from now with landscaping.
Yeah, yeah.
One other thing you could do is give Scott Reed a call.
that's a great idea.
Your Metro representative, and they're pretty good. And call his administrative assistant and see what they can do. I'm pretty sure there are some lighting codes
Okay.
in Metro Louisville.
Okay,
So we got 3 or 4 things you can do. Maybe
Yeah.
one of them will hit.
yeah,
And,
okay.
and Scott is very responsive. Scott Reed is very responsive. I think that's an excellent suggestion, as is John's. And I think you're first and foremost, Mr.
Okay.
Denham may be able to help you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Porter. Thanks for coming. Nice to meet you.
Tony.
All right. Any other comments from citizens? If not, we'll move to the mayor's report. I'll start by talking about the budget a little bit. We already had some discussion of that with our guests from Rumpke here. We are in the process of beginning preliminary work on the budget. The goal is to have a first reading in May and a second reading and the budget adopted in June. It is challenging because of increasing costs and the way our budget, our revenue stream works. Everybody's real estate appraisal went up, but the rate by state law goes down, so the revenues remain flat for the city. So our option there is to increase the rate, but there are a lot of other things we can do too, and we've heard some of those options from Rumpke. So we'll be addressing costs, but we may be having to look to revenues as well. So that's a preview of coming attractions on that. Second, I'll mention without stealing too much of Linda's thunder, but I'm pleased to report that we're making great progress on Little Hunting Creek Park. The work on the playground is completed. The caution tape is still around it, and we'll leave that caution tape in place for a few days because there's work on the sidewalks that's still ongoing. And we'd like to get a little further along with that before we officially open the playground up. So the sidewalks are progressing nicely. Once the sidewalks are finished, there's going to be landscaping that's going to be put in. So all that should happen in the very next few weeks, because April 30th, Sunday, April 30th at 2 p.m., our opening event in the pavilion will be taking place. And that's the Shakespeare in the Park production of Hamlet. So we will be, in effect, dedicating the pavilion on Sunday, the 30th at 2:00 p.m. I hope everybody will mark their calendars and plan to attend. There'll be further announcements about that, but it's something we're very excited about. And we certainly thank Mayor Evans for his leadership in getting the park as far along as we are. And it's a real asset for the city. Third, I will give you an update on Gustavo's. Since the zoning request they made, or the zoning variance request that they made, we have had some discussion with Wes Johnson, who is the builder. And I've asked David Holmes and John Evans to be available to meet with him to seek a middle ground. And he knows who they are. He's got their contact information. So just getting them together to get those discussions moving. But I'm hopeful that there'll be some accommodation made that'll be satisfactory to everybody concerned with regard to the appearance of the new restaurant. Will be coming up for discussion a little later rather, Don Gibson's suggestion for a revision of the ordinances, slight revision. Right now, I went over this today with John Clark. We believe it's pretty apparent Gustavo's is going to have to get approval for their design from the Prospect Council before they can move forward. So that whatever discussions there are with John Evans and David Holmes, they're going to have to come back and get final approval, whether they're seeking a variance or not. So that's a further level of protection for the city in that regard. While we're on the discussion of Gustavo's, they are breaking ground, which they're permitted to do. They've got a permit for, I think it's called site disturbance, which permits they're not beginning construction, but they will be breaking ground on this Wednesday. So that would be the 19th at 10 a.m. at 8909 US 42. I think everyone's invited. You're welcome to attend. I'll be there. So then the last item I'll mention is May 15th is Police Memorial Day. I've talked with Tony Denham, who's here this evening, about trying to organize some sort of recognition for our police officers. And we had started those discussions and started some preliminary planning for that before the tragic events of last week in Louisville. So we're more determined than we were before even to move forward on May 15th with appropriate ceremony to thank our police officers and remember police officers who've died. So that concludes my report, and I'll ask for the financial report from John.
So our cash on hand effective March 30, which consists of the checking account and 3 CDs, totals $3.6 million. We reduced that by the debt, the pension obligation of $1.8 million. We've got roughly a balance of $1.8 million. For the 2 months that we've had our CD investments, we've earned nearly $20,000. Our revenues for the year are at 3.2 million, and that's about 94% of budgeted income. Our expenditures are at 3.2 million, and that represents about 76% of the expenditures budgeted. The restricted road revenue now totals $241,000. As in the prior months I've mentioned, we're still paying close attention to budget items related to litigation. Otherwise, we are on budget, both from the revenue and expenditure side. Any questions?
Now, I'll just mention as a point of clarification, we have $3.6 million on hand. By ordinance, 1.8 million is held in reserve to satisfy the shortfall in the state pension system. So we're, when we say we've got 1.8 million, we have 1.8 million that's not restricted by ordinance that's available, but the total that we have on hand is 3.6 million. Okay, any questions for John?
Yeah, what is our monthly run rate for expenses?
Well, it obviously varies. I mean, I have to
understand,
get,
but,
Let me suggest if you've got a question like that, probably a good idea to give John a heads up So he could probably give you a good answer with a little advance notice. If you've got the information, go ahead.
No, I don't.
We'll get that to you.
Frank, I've noticed it runs about 320. About.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I knew it was
a lot of
something high.
fluctuations depending upon,
Okay.
accounts payable.
So that's about $1 million for the 3 months that we haven't hit yet.
About,
Less the $250,000, which is into cash already. So that's 1.6. So
And
we really-
that does correspond with what I got, $1
yeah,
million.
okay.
Just
and
something.
and that's kind of the way the budget was set up. The 3.4 million is the recurring or earned revenue. But this year there were other things in there and we were purposely addressing some of those, like finishing Little Honey Creek Park and LDG and some other things. So it's about running the budget.
Yeah, well, our normal budget is 3 million to 3.3 or something like that, which would be a run rate of 300,000 a month, which would, in a normal year, you take the Fed out of it. Yeah. Okay, I'm just curious relative to cash. We've got sufficient cash, apparently.
But
Yeah, I think we're in good
the
shape.
cash is likely to go down.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. Every year it does. So, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. That's a good question, good discussion. Anything else on the financial report? Okay, the Commission and Board reports, the Forestation Board, Lee.
Forestation has been very busy. We finished, from Forestation Board viewpoint, review and update of the ordinance, number 484 passed in 2007, which established the Forestation Board and governs, its powers and operations. And that's been reviewed, by, both the city attorney and the mayor, and, we're expecting to see being presented to council pretty soon with the, all the changes made. A major improvement in that ordinance is the ability of the city to collect fines from builders and other violators. We don't have that many fines, but, we had a situation where in the breakers, there was a, definitely hazardous tree. The city had to take it down, and it cost $3,000. We also passed from the forestation viewpoint, a fine of $500. That's $3,500. It's really never been collected. Just in a couple weeks ago in the weekly Reporter Journal, we saw that same builder sold a house in the breakers for over $1 million, 1.1 something, you know. So I'm sure that guy has the $3,500, that he owes the city. So in any event, action that's actually been taken by the mayor to put a freeze on giving that builder any more permits until the situation is resolved. That's a good step. Another thing we worked on was the city pre-plan, and it's ready for submission to council. We're continuing our canopy and memorial tree programs, which have been actually pretty popular. Arbor Fest, where we distribute trees anywhere, we've distributed anywhere from 45 to 100 trees, depending on the year. And we usually have a professional arborist or more than one arborist there to answer questions and guide the citizens who want to take these trees and plant them. So that program has probably accounted for 1,000 flowering trees in City Prospect over so many years. You know? Anyhow, that's ongoing, and we're going to try to emphasize more publicity for different tree programs, because we constantly find out that even though there's many articles about trees or tree ordinances or tree problems, tree care in the city newsletter, still a lot of people don't seem to be able to follow it. Another thing that's been going on is the various hazardous tree issues. We had ongoing ones in Bridgepoint, landings, and 3 locations at Fox Harbor. A big problem exists and is going to continue in the landings, where the main street is planted many years ago, presumed by the builder with the Bradford pears. And these Bradford pears just don't last, and they're subject to really falling apart. And we just declared, Forestation Board declared 3 particular Bradford pears to be hazardous and need to be remediated, removed. But that's an ongoing issue. Several years ago, the Forestation Board passed an ordinance, really, or not an ordinance, but a ruling that Bradford pears can no longer be planted on any city streets along right-of-ways. Those Bradford pears and land were there way before, and they're still there. We just added cottonwoods to the list of trees not acceptable for planting, and that was based on a citizen complaint who has cottonwoods in this area, but they're considered an invasive species. And I don't know that anybody is planting them, but we're getting getting them on the list of what not to do. Just last Friday, 6 canopy trees were planted for residents. 5 residents ordered trees. 1 resident with 2 canopy trees. And along with that, we also took what was to be a memorial tree that was going to go into Little Honey Creek Park, right where the sidewalk is being built. So we de-designated that as a memorial tree, and it's now planted at the exit area of Honey Creek Drive. It's a Jordan Creek oak. It's a very fine tree, and it'll be a nice addition. And when the construction is cleared up, and probably in the fall, we'll put the memorial tree in. Any questions?
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate your work. And I think I sent you an email this afternoon. I met with Rick Wilson this afternoon about the 3 Bradford pears and the landing. So we're starting to work on dealing with that situation. Okay, other reports, Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, Linda.
So the Parks Committee has also been very busy this spring. As the mayor mentioned, things are almost done at Little Honey Creek Park. I was a little optimistic in my written report saying I thought the sidewalk would be done last week, but it's almost there and the playground looks great. We've now had 2 wildflower walks this month. Jacqueline McGrail and assisted by Carolyn Embry took 35 area residents through the park on April 2nd. And that was a beautiful day, perfect weather. Our second walk was last Sunday. The weather wasn't quite so perfect, but we still had 25 people that came and took the tour. So Carolyn and Jacqueline and I have been in email conversation today, thinking that obviously this is a very popular activity. And what we probably need to do is break the group into 2 pieces. So we've got 2 very knowledgeable residents that can lead the walks. And so I think if we had 2 groups of 12 to 15, that would be a whole lot easier to manage. And we still might have a couple of volunteers that will kind of sweep at the end. As I mentioned in my written report, former Mayor John Evans's committee is very hard at work, lining up programs for the pavilion. And as the mayor mentioned, the first one on April 30th, but they also now have programs planned for June and August and September. And July 4th, we'll have the big band or swing band at Cowley for the 4th of July celebration. So we'll have something going on in the Prospect parks every month, starting this one. Oh, except for May. We're taking a derby break for May. We're working on it. The other thing that we've added to the schedule is a garlic mustard pull this exotic invasive plant really crowds out wildflowers. But we have beautiful wildflowers in our Harrods Creek Park and also in Putney Pond, because over the years, we've had volunteers that every spring pull out the invasive mustard plants. And noticing that Saturday is Earth Day, I know it's also thunder, but we're hoping the rain won't delay us and that we'll be able to take a couple of hours with a bunch of volunteers. So anyone that would like to join us, Harrods Creek Park, parking lot, 10 o'clock. Bring your gardening gloves and wear sturdy shoes. And if it rains, we've got an alternate rain date of Sunday, the next day, Sunday the 23rd at 1 p.m. the same place. And there, you should have gotten a city mail email blast today with those details. So if you have any questions, call City Hall or contact me. Last week, we did meet with 4 of the 5 contractors who had originally bid on the Harrods Creek Bridge project. So we were very pleased that we had 4 out of 5 that showed up for the pre-bid meeting. They have a week to ask any questions in writing, and the questions and the answers will be summarized for all of the contractors to be able to see. And then they have 4 weeks from that bid date or pre-meeting date to submit another bid for the project, and we'll see what happens. And I think that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Questions for Linda? Linda, last time I enjoyed the wildfire walk yesterday and last year we went, and it really is fun. It's fun to look at the wildflowers and enjoy them, but then to hear about them, even though I can't remember the names, it makes it a lot more enjoyable. So we really appreciated it. It's a good group.
Thank you.
Linda,
Oh, yes.
on this bridge down in Harris Creek, it's my understanding that, what's his name? Bornstein, Rob
from Bornstein.
yeah, that he had suggested that if the ends of the bridge were moved further apart, that would significantly cut down on the overall cost. Has that been discussed?
Yes, in fact, that was one of the reasons for having this pre-bid meeting, because the contractors that are still interested in participating in the bidding process have the option to recommend design change or either bridge design change or construction design changes that would reduce the cost of the projects. And they did have a representative here.
Thank you.
And it specifically discussed lengthening the span, which reduces the concrete work of the abutments. So it was a good suggestion from Rob, and it was certainly discussed at the pre-bid meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Linda. All right, we not on the agenda, but we have another report. John Clark has been chairing Natural Landscape Committee group that's been meeting, which we really appreciate. And John, if you could report on your progress, please.
I'll be brief. I call it the Chapter 92 work group. Chapter 92 of the Code of Ordinances addresses nuisances. And we have been focusing on natural landscapes and what might be appropriate for Prospect. We've met several times. The last full meeting, we established 2 subcommittees, one for structure and one for definitions. They are continuing their work, and we will get together when they have substantial work product to present to the entire committee. As I mentioned, discussion of natural landscapes has been a focus, and we're trying to find something that is appropriate for Prospect and the character of this community, rather than something that Metro did or something that a surrounding community did. So I think that's probably the most important thing, is to structure something, revise the existing ordinance that is appropriate for this community. So, and I would like to publicly thank the people that are serving on there. There's 10 people from the community that were volunteered to participate. We've gotten a lot of diverse opinions and good discussion among the group. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to
I
answer.
think Frank and Don Gibson.
Frank, Don, and David Holmes.
And David Holmes. So 3 of our council members, and we
Yes.
appreciate that. Appreciate your efforts and the efforts of your committee members.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for John? Thanks for the update. Keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, police report, Tony.
Good evening, everybody. Just quick little items I want to go over real quick. I know most people do know, some people may not, the chief laid his mom to rest this morning. She passed away at the end of last week. Just keep him in your prayers, keep his family in your prayers. Long, rough couple weeks for his whole family, but they appreciate everything that everybody up here and everybody around Prospect did. I guarantee he really appreciates that. Another quick thing, Officer Will, you guys saw the bank shooting that happened last week. We had kind of talked about that a little bit. I brought a flyer. Officer Will is a tremendous young man and probably served people in this community. Before he ever went on LMPD and got hired, he worked in fire and EMS out this way, which was right over in Owen County. So I'd be willing to bet he probably served some of our Prospect members during that time. He's a great kid. He has a twin brother that's in the class, 2 classes that's going to be behind him. They lost their father while he was in the academy, so his family's really had a rough ride. This is, and I have the flyers over here, Louisville Metro Police Foundation, where you can make donations to the family, anything like that. And the Metro Police Foundation is one of the most fantastic things you could ever donate to, I promise you. And they actually helped one of our officers who lost a son. They do a lot of things outside of just LMPD. So if you ever want a chance to give, it's a great organization to give to. Just wanted to run through those 2 things before I get started. I'm only going to talk about 3 things. 3 things I think are important for our community. One happened this month that I'd rather speak about this month because it's a little bit pressing. The Prospect Pharmacy over here, which is a mom and pop pharmacy that everybody sees over there, was hit last week on 4/6, 1:30, 2:30 in the morning, right around that area. There's a group going around Louisville. They've been in Shelby County. They've been over in Audubon Park. They've been over in Middletown, Springhurst, Linden, a couple other places. But breaking in these pharmacies, it's a group of black male juveniles, probably maybe 5, 6 at a time, to take a crowbar and break out the window. When they go in, they're looking for a specific item. They're looking for liquid codeine, other things that they use to mix drugs with. They got 0 out of ours. Our officer had just went through the parking lot right before it happened. Most of these get hit twice. Ours has not. They've somewhat subsided. Our detectives working with a couple other places. We think we've got a guy that's identified that probably is doing it because it has slowed down. But our guys did a great job getting over there that night. We have a good relationship with the pharmacy. Like I said, nothing was taken out of that. But that's just something to kind of mill around, think about when you're over that way, especially if you're around there in the evening. If you see anything out of sorts, get on that phone and you guys call us. The other thing, and a reminder to lock cars at night, Officer Hardy, and we do have this group. We have been very fortunate, Prospect, not to get hit by the roaming bands of thieves who have hit Norton Commons constantly, Oldham County constantly, and mainly around us. They come out in cars, they steal cars. They come out in packs of 2 or 3 cars. Probably at the most, they'll have about 10 individuals. They bail out of the cars, they go in the neighborhoods, check for unlocked doors. So there could be as many as 5 to 10, usually armed. Never confront these people. Make sure our constituents know that. We've let people know. Call us immediately if you see anybody milling around the cars. Officer Hardy rounds the corner from Montero going on to Gunston, sees a car with the door open, just sitting there up on the corner. Calls off on the radio, checks it out. During that meantime, I think it was the apartment manager that called that lives right there on Gunston. Steve gets a call that somebody is rummaging through the cars behind there on Gunston. Well, he had not known it yet. This is a stolen vehicle that's sitting out there on the street corner. There's another car that the kids were in that was behind that apartment complex on Gunston. They spotted Steve, took off, went out the back way of the neighborhood, or probably the other way, we don't know. But it's just an example of lock your cars, because the more cars that are unlocked, the longer they're hanging out because they're looking for stuff. And a lot of people have this theory of, well, I'll leave my car unlocked and nothing in it. That's giving them more time to be going rummaging through the cars. Lock your cars. They rarely break out windows. The only time they're going to break out windows is if they're over near businesses during daytime. It's the only time I ever really seen it out here. So make sure you're locking the cars. And our citizens are fantastic about calling. The minute Steve came around that corner, somebody was already on 911 calling. As you can see, Steve got the run while he was there. But to give you an idea of how they're doing it, they're stealing the vehicles at 11:57 over here in Goshen on 4108 Meadowland. That car was stolen. By 10 after 12, they were breaking into cars over here right off Gunston. So that's how quick they're acting, and they're stealing the cars basically because there's no repercussions in Jefferson County. That's the God's honest truth. That's what's happening. But make sure we're locking our cars. Make sure everybody understands locked vehicles at night. They're not messing with, if they're locked, they're gone. They're moving on. As long as they're unlocked, they're staying out here and doing it. The guy, Steve called the guy said, no, my car's in the driveway. It was not, it was stolen. He saw it on the camera after he came outside. So within 10 minutes, they're moved over here. We haven't had any instances of that since. And I give that credit to the late watch guys for the patrol they do. So the main message out of that, lock the cars, please. The other flock, as we talk about the flock cameras, it's been about probably 2 weeks ago. Day work, we get a hit on a flock camera that's going into the estates of Hunting Creek, that there's a vehicle with a stolen license plate that just came in to Hunting Creek. So immediately we're able to get Officer McKeon and I head over there. By the time we get over there, we get a good picture of the vehicle. It's a work truck. So between house watches, all the communication we have with Rick Wilson, we know what houses are abandoned, what houses are getting worked on, and who's where, who's out of town from the house watch list. Immediately went back to Docrest Court. We have 2 houses back there that are vacant. One, it's an older fella that's in a nursing home. The other, the people have moved out and the house hasn't went on the market yet. The vehicle was back there. The guy was painting. He'd been back there probably a week or 2. But to give you just a heads up on how the flock system works, this was reported on 327 through Metro out in the south end that this license plate was stolen. 328, he comes back to work, it hits immediately. We end up getting a picture. Myself and Officer McKeon got back there, nonviolent criminal that's back there. He had 4 warrants, 1 a felony, all for that type of thing for stolen plates, and he had the stolen plate on. So basically, the long and short of it, the flock cameras work fantastic. We were able to get over there immediately and make an arrest. So that's something that me and the mayor have talked about before about the flock cameras. But those cameras work fantastic. They're on the front of Hunting Creek. They're also on the back over on Fox Meadow, and they're right there at the end of Westover as well. They work fantastic. And there's a new one installed at the front over in on the back of Innisbrook, or the front of Innisbrook right there where it comes in. But that's about it. I'll have those flyers over there. Keep the chief in your prayers. If you guys have any questions, I'll entertain any questions.
What, you said there was one at the entrance to Hunting Creek?
Hunting Creek.
No, Hunting Creek Estate.
Estate.
Just right there. As soon as you go in, that's where it hit.
I didn't-
Yeah. That's where it hit. And then there's one in the back there, part of Fox Meadow, and there's one in Westover right there. But it was within minutes. I mean, the minute they reported it, the next day, because he said, how'd you all find out? I've been out here working for 2 weeks. So when the system reports it, it works well.
Would you recommend cameras for the entrance to Hunting Creek and Fox Harbor?
Yes.
I mean, those are the only 2.
Yes.
Admittedly.
Well, Bridgeport would be another, there'd be another spot up there to put those in there, but they work excellent. They're very clear. They have a data system where we can get in, and that just tells you what it does immediately. As soon as that car went through, and when he said, we knew it was reported stolen the day before, And then within just a few minutes, and, you know, like I said, the house watches, we know who's out of town. From permits, we know who's working on what houses, and immediately it looked like a work truck. So that's kind of why we went back over there.
So you'd recommend that we put money in the budget for additional
I did.
cameras?
I did. I think they work fantastic. Yes, sir.
Tony, would you elaborate a little bit on, you said these people who are operating with stolen cars and that there are no consequences in Jefferson County.
Right.
What prevents there being consequences?
Juveniles, and mainly that's what it is. If a juvenile, you may or may not have seen on TV. For multiple years, there was a JCYC is what we call it, Jefferson County Youth Center, where if there was any type of offense, you were able to take a juvenile actually to jail down there on Chestnut. That doesn't exist anymore. That completely does not exist. If we were to find a juvenile out here breaking into a house, parents are almost not involved anymore. It's just the reality of what we're dealing with. If we immediately have to contact court designated workers, CDW, to see if we can even house that juvenile. And if we do, it won't be in Jefferson County. So you see the problem immediately exists. We would have to take, and we can't do that. We can't have an officer or two working and take somebody to Lexington or whatever that system works. But you see right now, LMPD, and that's where I retired from, LMPD is struggling to get that thing back open and throwing money at it. You saw them doing a tour of it about a week or two ago, because if this doesn't change ASAP, nothing's changing, because that's where a lot of the violent crime is coming from juveniles. But very true.
Yeah, the mayor, Mayor Greenberg told the Jefferson County League of City Mayors at a conference a few weeks ago that Don Gibson and I attended.
Yeah.
That they are 300 officers down in Louisville Metro. So they're short 300 officers, and he pretty much said their response to crime is triage. That they're responding to violent crimes, property crimes are not getting much attention.
It is, and it's difficult, like I talked about training recruits, it takes, 25, 26 weeks to get them out of the academy. It takes another 4 to 5 months to get them out on the streets whenever they're riding with PTOs like Officer Wilt was. And they've even shortened that, which I think is probably not a good idea in my opinion. But they're playing catch up, and I'm not sure they're going to.
Yeah, it's
pretty much
a very tough situation.
Yeah.
And the flock cameras, we are planning to include that in the budget, Frank. I think it's a great thing. The question is, where are we going to put the cameras? So I thought, oh, this is great. We'll put one at one end of 42, one at the other end of 42.
Right.
We've already got them in the estate section. We got and one on River Road. We got the whole city covered. Right. Well, it's not quite that simple. You get an awful lot of data if you do that. So
we do.
We may have to.
We just want to protect our neighborhoods. It's main.
Yep.
40 also. As far as that goes, it really helps us out. And if somebody's for the neighborhood, well, it's a tremendous help on the back.
The other thing beside locking cars is closed garage doors.
Yes, and I'll finish up quickly with that perfect example. But at Denver Bridge, someone left their garage open. Our lake watch officer really diligent. If you get one in your mailbox, sometimes you'll get one of those. Hey, close your garage door. It's just a nice reminder. Hey, I came by. It was 1:30 in one of your garages. He wrote one and left it in their mailbox. And they left it open. They didn't just leave their garage open. They came when the kids that came in and stole a vehicle, they went into their house because the door right there going into that house, the garage door, the access door to the house was there and the keys were in it. And they stole both cars and they were used in other crimes. Just like what I'm talking about, that guy's car over there that Sengochi got stolen, and they immediately drove over here and started doing stuff. That's what they did. Two cars from here were found. One over, I think, shot.
So Tony, let me get this straight. So
Tony, could you get a microphone?
Sure, absolutely. Sorry.
say you respond to a call and you catch one or two or three of these juveniles that are doing this.
Right.
Then what happens?
There is, if the court designated worker doesn't give you the okay to take them somewhere, you don't do anything. You try to turn them over to a parent, but good luck on that. That's the main problem.
Basically, yes.
Yes. Yes.
At 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, at 2 a.m. in the morning. Yes, it's causing major problems. Metro is, you see what's going on in Metro. And it's driven from, there's already a violent juvenile crime problem. And with zero consequences, it's really starting to show us.
And as you mentioned, the juvenile detention facility in Louisville was closed a few years ago. I'm not sure how that came.
A while now.
Yeah, how that came about, but it's being reopened. It's an expensive proposition, but
has.
but that work is ongoing.
Yeah, it's, they're trying to put out a forest fire on the hose. It's not working.
Yeah,
Just not.
it's a tough problem. We're certainly
They're
very.
doing their best, not problem.
Oh, and one thing I'll mention also that I was not aware of, Tony actually, who's a retired LMPD officer, actually works in the academy training LMPD officers with every academy class. So he knew this young man who was shot, knew him quite well, and knows his twin brother, knows the whole situation with the family, as he mentioned. So Tony, we appreciate your work, not only here in Prospect, but for all of the metro area.
Keeps family in prayers.
Okay, thank you for your report.
Very good.
All right, well, my agenda. Oh, here we are. Any unfinished business? New business. We've got a first reading of an ordinance that Mr. Gibson has prepared. Don?
City of Prospect, ordinance number 623, series 2023, an ordinance relating to the amendment and modification of chapter 150 building regulations of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Prospect. Whereas chapter 150 establishes a code of building regulations for the City of Prospect, and whereas the City Council intends to amend chapter 150 to establish a colonial architectural standard for commercial and non-residential buildings. And whereas the City Council is required to express approval of all architectural plans for any commercial and non-residential buildings. The change is in addition to, it's actually item G to the current architectural ordinance, and it says the City Council is to approve architectural plans for any commercial or non-residential building to ensure compliance with the city's existing brick colonial architectural style. In that it's an addition, I see on section 2, all ordinances are part of the ordinance in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. This ordinance change again is an addition, and there's no inadvertence to change to any other ordinance. So I'm not sure if we could strike that section 2.
And I think section 2 and section 3 may already be in the ordinance. John, is that right?
That's sort of standard language for modification. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that conflicts per se, but its purpose.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Don and I, if I might, before we.
Sure.
Don and I talked this weekend about this proposed ordinance, and I think the intention may be just to make sure that the council is acting on building permits for commercial buildings, and to make sure that we feel they're compatible with and appropriate for Prospect.
Yeah, the current language in the architecture for a permit, like item A goes to brick, and it has to be brick or stone. Item B speaks to roof material. Item C speaks to the pitch to the roof. Item D speaks to, windows. Item E speaks to any outside walkways not having drop-in ceilings. And item F speaks to there has to be a rendition in specifics, in colors, etc. None of it gets to the thing that says what's the look and feel of the building? What's it look like? Is it compatible with the current structures, the current buildings in Prospect? And I think that's what we're getting to. What I'm trying to get to is that we have some say in terms of what goes up in the city to ensure that it's compatible with what's already here.
And Don and I had some discussion about perhaps modifying some of this language in the ordinance to drop the brick colonial language and say that the council would it would be necessary for the council to approve the appearance that's been proposed. And we talked about moving forward with an architectural review commission, perhaps, that would advise and make recommendations to the council, but the council would be the ultimate arbiter of those questions. So I think it's a good effort and a good start. This is a proposed first reading. Our approach to first readings is we have a motion for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I have several comments, although I spoke with Don today. I'm in full agreement with the position that Don's taking, but I'd like to have a look at, I think that the section 2, as Don mentioned, I think that's superfluous. If it's already in there, why would we include it in another rendition? I don't think it adds anything. The second point, in section 1, although I realize it's a standard language, boilerplate, is amended, sets forth, and it says the old language struck through. Well, there is no old language. So my point is, I think that there is some editing required. I think also in the body of this, and again, Don and I discussed this afternoon, the city council is to approve. I think that language needs to be something like final approval is required by something like that. So there's some, I don't think it changes the first reading because it's not material. I don't think. Is it, Chris?
No, I don't, but I was about to say, I think that you need to make sure that it is an objective standard and not arbitrary. And from what I heard a while ago, I was a little bit concerned that maybe we would get into the area of being arbitrary. If you look at an existing brick colonial architectural style, I know what that means, but if you just say the city council can approve it or not approve it, I don't know what that means. So I think you have to have an objective standard that any reasonable person can look at and say, I've got to comply with it.
I particularly like the fact that you're mentioning architectural aspects of it. But I agree with the city attorney that we need to put in a definition of the architectural aspect that we're looking for. And colonial is what we have throughout the city, at least for commercial buildings.
And I think to your point, Chris, that's one of the reasons Don and I discussed the Architectural Review Commission, which the ordinance also provides for. And I would suggest, I think I'm sensing that we all appreciate the spirit of this. This is a first reading. I think we can work on it between now and our next council meeting, make changes. If the changes are substantial enough, we have a new first reading at the next meeting. But I think we're moving in the right direction. So we had the motion for first reading. We've had the second. We had some good discussion. Is there further discussion? Yes, Frank.
Well, then I would like to amend it to take section 2 out at this point, because I think that would be that might be.
Just to be clear, that's not the language that's going to be included in the ordinance. That's just a section clarifying, the only added language is under section 1 is underlined.
So it's just G is being added.
Right.
Right.
And which I think we're all agreeing we're going to modify in any event.
Yeah, we can refine it.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's some legwork to be done to see whether or not there is any parts of that ordinance. I looked at it today a little bit and I thought I had some questions to say whether or not this would supersede some of the processes currently in place, as in code enforcement or something like that. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Let me suggest, Frank and Don Gibson, maybe if you all work together, include me in that discussion. I think we've all got a sense of where we want to end up, and then whatever we come up with, run by Chris and make sure we're legal,
Yeah.
and then look at it again at our next meeting.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something we need to do because I think that's one of the Achilles heels of a lot of our ordinances.
Yeah.
The objectivity.
So this is for first reading. I'll ask if there's no further discussion. This is vote on a first reading, not on adopting the ordinance. I'll ask for yeas and nays first. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we've had a first reading. We'll take a further look at this and come back at the next council meeting.
I'll be with Frank and Chris
And if
and anyone else that would like to participate.
And if we need to, if for any reason we feel time's of the essence, we need a further meeting to have a new first reading, we can accomplish that too. So
I don't think time is of the essence, but
I don't either. But I think as things stand right now, any building permit has to come back to the council for approval. So, but I think this is a good discussion and a good effort. Okay, is there any other business to come before the council? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thanks, Frank. Second? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.